The marble lobby of the Delphine Hotel shone like a museum. Chandeliers floated over a lacquered check-in counter, where 3 clerks typed in polite silence. Suitcases whispered across mosaic tiles. A quartet of investors in navy suits stood near a ficus, laughing quietly like they owned the air. Through the revolving door walked Amara Cole. She wasn't loud about it. She never had to be. Her presence announced itself. Precision-tailored ivory blazer, onyx slacks, a suitcase that moved as if it knew better than to rattle. A slim black card, matte as midnight, balanced between her fingers. "Good evening," she said to the clerk whose name tag read Helena. "Reservation for Cole, Amara Cole." Helena's eyes flicked up, then down. The polite smile faltered, not from confusion but from some old script pulled from a drawer people pretended not to have. "May I see your ID?" Helena asked, crisp. Amara slid the card and passport forward. Helena glanced at them once, then twice, as if the letters might spill new meanings if she stared long enough. "I'm afraid we're fully booked," Helena said. She returned the passport but kept the card caught beneath her palm. The room behind Amara bowed under evening footsteps. A doorman nodded to concierge. Someone laughed at a joke too late. A manager in a charcoal suit, Mr. Whitcomb, glided over like a warning. Amara's mouth tightened. "Fully booked. I made the reservation 3 weeks ago, confirmed this morning. I also just flew 6 hours and would prefer to save my patience for things that deserve it." Helena's smile reappeared, this time sharpened. "We had an unexpected overbooking." "It happens." "To whom?" Amara asked, soft. Mr. Whitcomb placed a hand on the counter. "Is there a problem?" "Apparently. I don't exist," Amara said. "Or my money doesn't." A bellhop, no older than 19, steadied a luggage cart nearby and pretended to fix a strap while listening. The 2 investors near the ficus hushed themselves to hear better. One of them slid his phone upward, the camera already open. Amara leaned forward, card raised, not pleading but presenting a fact. "Put me in any room. I will not argue about views." Helena's cheeks flushed. "We cannot accept this card. It's a centurion," said one of the investors before he caught himself. "It's very valid." Mr. Whitcomb turned the card infinitesimally and returned it as if it might stain his gloves. "We reserve the right to refuse service." Amara held his gaze. Her heartbeat stayed slow, her voice lower. "Do you, now?" Behind her, a child pulled at his mother's sleeve and whispered, "Is that lady famous?" The mother shushed him with the careful fear of someone who has learned that public embarrassments are contagious. Amara set the card on the counter like a chess piece placed with a fingertip. "My attorney would have an elegant conversation with your policy manual. But I did not come here tonight to make anyone's job harder. I came here to rest." Mr. Whitcomb's smile was the shape of a locked door. "There is another hotel 10 blocks south that may accommodate your needs." The pause before needs hung there, rancid and visible. The investors exchanged a look. The bellhop's jaw clenched. A housekeeper pushing a cart along the far wall slowed as if she could make the moment last long enough to change. Amara exhaled once, just enough to steady the small storm that spasmed in the ribs. "What you're refusing," she said, "is not a card. And not just a room." Then she turned the card over and tapped it with her nail. Tick. The sound was tiny. It drew the entire lobby's attention as if she had struck a match in a dark auditorium. "Save the room," she said. "I won't be needing it." She took the card, slid it into her blazer, and pivoted, her suitcase following like a shadow with wheels. The revolving door caught her reflection in quarters. Calm, composed, and, as she stepped into the night, utterly unwilling to leave the moment uncorrected. Outside, cold air typed a poem against her face. She lifted her phone, called someone, and said only, "It's time." The investor's video kept recording. Amara Cole had been called many things: disruptor, philanthropist, miracle. She preferred builder. She grew up in a two-bedroom in Atlanta with a mother who could stretch a paycheck and a Sunday prayer into Friday dinner. As a teenager, Amara learned to code on second-hand laptops she repaired with YouTube videos and a screwdriver loaned from a neighbor. In college, the computer lab became her sanctuary and battlefield. She worked 3 jobs to stay enrolled. She knocked on doors that opened only after she learned how to hinge them herself. By 27 she had founded Sable, a fintech platform that made small business loans to people banks didn't see until their storefronts were already famous. She did not inherit a lucky last name or a phone full of uncles on boards. She built the door, then built the hallway behind it. Her first check for $1 million felt like a dare. Her first loss felt like gravity. She learned. She reinvested. She built again. By 36, she was the youngest black self-made billionaire in the state. By 38, she'd endowed scholarships for girls who loved math but had been told to smile instead. She bought apartment buildings and froze the rent. She put free internet in neighborhoods where Wi-Fi had been treated like a luxury, not electricity. She still booked her own hotel rooms. By the time Amara's car reached the curb, the investor's video had already leapt across timelines. Billionaire denied a room, read the first caption. Guess why? Whispered another. In the clip, Amara's face was calm. The manager's was not. The card, the words, the refusal, they looped. The comments poured in like rain through a broken window. Some defended the hotel, more did not. The lobby was recognizable. The Delphine, an old money haunt that liked its walls cream and its decisions invisible. Amara's head of communications, Leah, called before the driver had merged into traffic. Are you okay? Annoyed, Amara said. I'm thinking. The clip's at 400,000 in 20 minutes. Good. Let it breathe. Do you want me to schedule a statement? Amara watched the city stream by. The steeples and cranes, the luxury storefronts lit like altars. She thought about her mother telling her, when you have a seat at the table, bring chairs. She thought about how sometimes the table had to be rebuilt, not just expanded. No statement, Amara said. I want a list. A list. Who owns the Delphine? Not the LLC, the actual spine. Also who holds their debt, who supplies their linens, who programs their PMS, who trains their staff. And Leah, do it fast. Copy. Amara ended the call, opened a new one, and said to her general counsel, Jay, I need something that looks like the sun rising and sets like a contract. Jay laughed once because he knew her language. You're not buying the Delphine. Not tonight, Amara said. Tonight I'm building 7 stories of consequences. The city's winter wind could cut a person out of themselves. Amara stood at the window of the small boutique hotel where Leah had booked her a last-minute suite, the kind of place that didn't bother to pretend its plants were real. She dragged a finger across the glass, leaving a trail that faded as quickly as breath. Leah texted a spreadsheet link. Amara scrolled. Owner. Delphine Holdings Partners, a private partnership layered like pastry. Primary lender. Jericho Bank. Management company. Aurelius Hospitality. Group. Training vendor. Polites Institute. Laundry vendor. River and Reel. Unions. None. Surprise. Pending litigation. 2 discrimination suits, quietly settled. A workers' comp case stalled. A wrongful termination claim labeled frivolous. Amara smiled once, not from joy. From recognition. Systems made results. You could not ask a rotten policy to produce ripe days. She dialed Jericho Bank first. She had an account there that hummed like an aircraft carrier. At 10:42 p.m., she was speaking to Jericho's VP of Special Assets, who sounded like a man who kept whiskey in the second drawer. Ms. Cole, it's late. Good, she said. I need the Delphine's loan covenants. I'll wire you a reason. Money can't buy dignity, she'd always said. But it can rent the room where decisions sleep. Within an hour, Jay emailed scans, covenants about conduct, about compliance, about reputational risk. The debt agreement was a delicate web. Tug at it, and the chandelier moved. Amara wrote another list. Non-negotiables. 1. Restitution for guests and staff harmed by discriminatory practices. 2. Equity and inclusion embedded in hiring and promotion. 3. Community investment. Real ones, not PR photos of ribbon cuttings with children who'd never be invited back. She closed her laptop at 2:11 a.m., slept for 90 minutes, woke with the sun already arguing. Morning carried a fresh arrogance. The Delphine's doorman wore it like cologne. At 9 a.m., a line of cameras stood across the street, separated by a velvet rope as if the sidewalk belonged to the hotel. A news van blinked its satellite dish up toward the chilled sky. Inside the lobby, Helena had done her hair. Mr. Whitcomb straightened cufflinks that reflected expensive shame. The bellhop, Tariq, the young one, watched as if watching itself could change what had happened. At 9:07 a.m., the revolving door sliced the air into quarters again. Amara entered wearing the same ivory blazer. The suitcase was absent. Purpose traveled lighter than luggage. Leah followed with a tablet and a comm that was actually a blade. A security guard stepped forward, palm out. "Ma'am." Amara smiled at him, small, disarming. "I'm here for a meeting. Do you have an appointment?" Mr. Whitcomb asked, arriving like a choreographed sigh. "With accountability," Amara said. "You'll do." He blinked. "Ms. Cole, if you're here to create a spectacle, I prefer the word audit." Cameras pressed against the windows outside like curious birds. Leah slid a document across the counter. "A courtesy copy," she said. Whitcomb scanned the first page and lost his color. Jericho Bank's letterhead glared at him. A covenant notice. Material breach under Section 8.3, reputational and compliance risk. The bank had called a meeting with Delphine's partners for that afternoon. Attendance mandatory. Helena peered over his elbow, then back to Amara, her mouth separating into a nervous O. The housekeeper who had paused the night before paused again now, this time by intention. "While we wait," Amara said, "I'd like to speak to your staff." "All of them. You can't just." "I can," she said, and pointed to the letter. "And I will." They gathered in a private ballroom that smelled faintly of boiled coffee and stored linens. Managers leaned against the back wall like they were used to ducking. Line cooks still in aprons sat shoulder to shoulder with housekeepers whose hands had been taut by bleach and time. The bellhop Tariq stood near a woman with a floral headscarf and a man in engineering blues who still had his toolbox. Amara stood at the front without a mic. "I'm not here to scold," she said. "I'm here to listen. Last night, I was denied a room because someone decided I did not fit the picture in their head of who a guest at this hotel looks like. That decision was about me, but it was also about a system. Systems create behaviors. Behaviors create headlines. Headlines create losses. Losses create panic. And panic creates moments like this." She paused. "I want to hear what you've been asked to accept." For a minute, silence defended everyone. Then the floral-scarfed woman raised her hand. "My name is Rosa," she said, accent warm and careful. "We get notes from management about the tone of the hotel. Sometimes it means we warn security when a guest looks, you know." She glanced at Amara, apology in the eyes. "Not rich." The engineering tech cleared his throat. "We asked for more cameras in staff hallways after a guest grabbed my coworker. They installed cameras in the lobby instead." A front desk clerk said, "We've been pushed to upsell rooms to anyone who wear a ring and a watch." "Profile the profile," the old manager used to joke. Tariq said nothing. He looked at his hands. "You?" Amara asked him, gentler than the room. He swallowed. "Last week, a guest called me boy. I told Mr. Whitcomb." He said, "Better a boy than unemployed. Gasps do strange things to ceilings. They climb them like ivy." Amara looked back at Whitcomb, who stood with a vein climbing his temple. He opened his mouth. She raised a hand. "Don't." To everyone else, she said, "I can't promise you the world today. But I can promise you this. Workplaces that humiliate you don't deserve you." She turned to Leah, who tapped the tablet. We're setting up a confidential hotline handled by an outside firm. We'll pay for legal counsel for any staff member with harassment or discrimination claims related to this property in the past 3 years. We'll also offer 12 months of training, paid time, for any employee who wants to move into management. That's effective now. Rosa started to cry in the way people do when their tears have been practicing for months. And one more thing, Amara said, eyes cutting toward the back. No one gets fired for speaking today. Mr. Whitcomb made a small sound. The kind a man makes when he realizes the ocean he thought was ornamental has tides. At 2 p.m., Delphine Holdings partners assembled around an oval table that had seen decades of cigar smoke and brags. The partners arrived with storm faces. Jericho Banks VP rapped his knuckles on the wood. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, this is Ms. Cole. Polite nods, then less polite stares. I'll be brief, Amara said. Your hotel violated your own covenants. You have significant exposure, legal, financial, reputational. You can patch a hole in the hull, or you can rebuild the ship. I'd like to buy the ship. A laugh sprouted somewhere near the Scotch decanter. Mr. Ellison, a partner with hair that made promises he hadn't earned, said, we're not for sale. Everything is, Amara said, at the right price and the wrong time. Today is both. Jay slid packets down the table. Debt analysis, cash flow, unionization risk, a glossy page titled the Delphine Fellowship, a program to recruit, train, and place underrepresented talent in hospitality leadership. The plan wasn't window dressing, it was architecture. And then Amara said the sentence that pivoted the room. If you don't sell, Jericho will exercise its covenants to demand costly compliance remedies. Your lenders will reassess your rates. Your management contract will be renegotiated. I will also pay for every former staff member your policies harmed to tell their stories with good lawyers and better microphones. Silence tried to think of a comeback and failed. Jay added another folder. Or you can accept a clean exit at a fair multiple with indemnities carved to protect you from past sins. The partners did the math, not only in numbers but in sleep. They weighed the cost of tomorrow's newspaper against tonight's cash. They considered whether they wanted Amara as their adversary, someone who wouldn't tear the building down, but would pull the curtain until the sun stung. By 3:23 p.m., the room shifted from fight to deal. By 4:40, they had a term sheet. By 5:15, someone joked weakly about naming a suite after Amara. No one laughed. Amara walked back into the lobby that evening not as a denied guest but as the architect of its next chapter. She stood where she'd been told to look elsewhere and turned the counter into a podium. Cameras lined the marble. Staff gathered along the railings on the mezzanine, their uniforms an accidental chorus. Guests lingered, drawn by the gravity of spectacle and the possibility of witness. Yesterday, Amara began, I was refused a room at this hotel for reasons that had nothing to do with occupancy. That was not the first time in history something like that has happened. But today, it will be the last time it happens at this hotel. A hush deepened, the kind with a heartbeat. I have entered into an agreement to acquire the Delphine. Over the coming months, we'll renovate the rooms, yes, but more importantly, we'll renovate the rules. We'll establish wage transparency. We'll create the Delphine Fellowship to train and place 100 employees from underrepresented backgrounds into management roles across the city in the next 2 years. We'll set aside 10% of net profits for a community reinvestment fund directed by a board with actual neighbors on it. And we are creating a restitution program for anyone who can demonstrate harm from discriminatory practices at this property in the last 5 years. Gasps. A flutter of hands rising to mouths. A sound from Rosa like the beginning of a hymn. Amara's voice did not rise. It did not need to. To those who turned me away last night, this is not revenge. It's repair. Revenge would be small. Repair is a building with lights on. She looked up at the mezzanine. To the staff, my door is open. The only behavior that will not be tolerated is contempt. We're here to build a place where everyone goes to sleep a little more human than they woke up. Someone started applauding. Tarek, the bellhop. Then the sound grew until the chandeliers trembled and the air changed, as if a window had finally opened on a long house. The following week moved like a montage. Lawyers carved through language, engineers toured the basement with notebooks. A muralist took measurements in the alley where staff smoked on breaks and smiled like planning joy. Amara spent mornings with spreadsheets and afternoons with people. She walked the service corridors, learned the names of the line cooks, asked the dishwasher what would make his job feel like respect. She shadowed the housekeeping team for 2 hours and came away with the conviction that anyone who called those women unskilled had never lifted a mattress 12 times an hour. She sat with Helena in a small office, the door open because closed doors had done enough damage. "I'm not going to humiliate you," Amara said. "I'm going to ask you a question I want you to ask yourself every morning. What am I protecting when I say no? If the answer is comfort, find a different answer. If the answer is people, we can work from there." Helena nodded, tears like fossils trying to move. "I'm sorry," she whispered, which was either a seed or nothing at all. Time would tell. With Mr. Whitcomb, the conversation was shorter. "You're relieved," Amara said, and slid a severance packet across the table that was fair, because fairness wasn't a favor, it was policy. He opened his mouth, closed it. "People like you ruin institutions. People like me build them," she said, "so they stop ruining people." That night, a talk show ran a split screen. The viral lobby clip on one side, Amara's announcement on the other. The host said, "This is what power looks like when it's bored with excuses." Applications for the Delphine Fellowship opened on a Tuesday and crashed the server by lunch. They came from sous chefs and single dads, from theater majors who knew how to stage a lobby, from veterans who could spot a safety hazard with their eyes closed. Amara insisted every applicant receive a response written by a human. She read 50 a night, whispering names to remember. Tarek applied. He explained how he had learned 5 ways to say welcome in 4 languages because he figured the first and most radical form of hospitality was to let someone know they were seen. Rosa applied. She had managed her mother's rooming house for 8 years before Politesse Institute told her that her accent suggested back of house. A week later, the fellows gathered in the ballroom where they had first told the truth. They sat at round tables with iPads and bad coffee, waiting for the opening session. Amara stood again at the front, this time with a whiteboard and a marker. "Today we're going to design a hotel," she said. "Not with granite and gilding. With rules. With roots. With rituals." She drew 3 circles. "Dignity, delight, defense." "Dignity is a promise," she said. "Delight is a surprise. Defense is a plan for when dignity and delight are threatened." They broke into teams. They rebuilt the check-in script so that every guest was asked the same questions in the same kind voice. They redesigned the complaint process so that it didn't punish staff for surfacing truth. They created rotating front desk spotters whose job was to notice bias like a leak and fix it like 1, 2. By evening, the whiteboard looked like choreography. 2 months later, the Delphine reopened one wing, soft launch. The marble still gleamed, but now framed prints on the hallway walls showcased local photographers, families on stoops, the city's river in fog, a little boy leaping for a kite. The lobby added a bookshelf with titles in 3 languages. A sign by the elevator read, "Hospitality is not a performance, it's a practice." A woman in a red dress stood at the front desk, impatient, a suitcase scuffed from a dozen taxi trunks. Helena, hair in a simple bun, voice steady, greeted her with the same script she used for everyone. "Good evening. Welcome to the Delphine. May I have your name?" The woman snapped her card on the counter. "Just give me an upgrade. I don't care what it costs." Helena glanced at the screen, then at the woman, then at Amara's 3 circles she had taped behind the monitor where only she could see them. "I'd be happy to explore that," Helena said. "First, I'll confirm your reservation." The woman huffed, tapping her nails. Last time I was here, a manager knew to give me what I asked for. I believe we've changed managers, Helena said. We haven't changed our respect. The woman blinked, looked at the card, looked at Helena. Something in her shoulder let go. Fine, she muttered. Amara watched from an armchair by the fireplace, anonymous beneath the newsboy cap. Leah sat beside her, whispering into her tablet. The bellhop, Tariq, rolled a cart past, gave Amara the slightest nod, the secret handshake of co-conspirators. Remember the little boy last month? Leah murmured. The one who asked if you were famous. Amara smiled. Everyone's famous to someone who loves them. She stood, walked to the window where on the first night cameras had pressed like faces to a glass cake. Outside, the city kept going, ambulances and delivery trucks, a couple arguing their way toward dinner, a man teaching his daughter to ride a scooter by the curb. Inside, the lobby hummed in a new key. On a clear evening 6 months to the day after the denial, Amara returned to the front desk, not to check in, but to give someone else a key. Rosa stood there in a navy blazer with a new name tag, Rosa Delgado, front office manager. She had a posture like a flag finally allowed to wave. Amara placed a small black box on the counter. For you. Rosa opened it. Inside lay a key, old brass, engraved with a room number and a quote on a tiny tag. Every room is a room for everyone. Rosa covered her mouth with her hand. As this, it's the master to room 428, Amara said. Your mother used to clean that room. Now you run the team that chooses who opens it. Rosa looked up, eyes made of ocean. How do I thank you? You keep the door open for the next person who thinks they don't belong, Amara said. And when someone tells you to close it, you ask why. Make them say their fear out loud. Fear hates the daylight. Rosa laughed through tears. You talk like my pastor. I talk like someone whose mother survived small rooms, Amara said. A child wandered up, the same boy from the lobby that first night. He wore a t-shirt with dinosaurs and hope. Are you the lady who owns the hotel? He asked. Amara crouched so their eyes met. I'm one of the ladies, she said. My mom says you made it so I can come in here, he said, pointing at his chest like permission lived there. Before, the guard looked at us funny. Your mom was right, Amara said. The boy reached out, touched the brass key in Rosa's hand as if checking whether it was real. Keys are cool, he said, and ran back to his mother, who watched the exchange with eyes that had either cried earlier or planned to later. A month later, an envelope arrived addressed to Ms. Amara Cole. Inside was hotel stationery with handwriting that leaned forward like a walker. Dear Ms. Cole, I stayed at the Delphine 50 years ago on my honeymoon. My husband had a scholarship here after the war. The manager told us a certain room was unavailable, though we watched someone else get it. We were too tired to argue. We slept in a smaller room and promised each other we wouldn't let the smallness in. Last week, for our 50th, our granddaughter booked us a suite. Rosa greeted us like family. We watched a young bellhop teach a little girl how to press the elevator button that changes the floor numbers to Braille. In the bar, a pianist played Blue Skies, and the bartender told us the new owner believes justice has a budget line. When we checked out, I cried. I didn't cry at 20. I didn't know I was allowed to. Thank you for the room. Not the one we slept in. The other one. The one you made in the world. With love and rent paid. Martha and Henry Wallace. Amara folded the letter and placed it beside her mother's photograph on the credenza. Her mother's smile had always been proud and worried in equal measure, as if happiness were a coat she was still learning to wear. Look, Mama, Amara whispered to the captured light. We built a room you'd like. Power is a thirsty thing. It asks for more or it withers. Amara decided to pour. In the following year, she worked with City Council to draft a voluntary code of hospitality standards that doubled as a competitive advantage. Hotels that signed on got tax credits for measurable equity outcomes, promotion diversity, wage transparency, community spend. The Delphine met the benchmark early. Others followed. Greed learning a more ethical alphabet. Polites Institute. Those trainers of tone, shut down after losing contracts. In their place rose a cooperative run by hospitality veterans like Rosa who trained staff to carry dignity like trays, balanced, necessary, not to be spilled on anyone's head. Jericho Bank created a covenant equity clause template and offered discounted rates to companies who adopted it. A report in the Journal of Urban Policy tracked a 12% decrease in discrimination complaints in properties that signed on within the first year. Someone on a panel called it the Cole effect. Amara rolled her eyes in the green room and then went out and said thank you because movements need names, not to flatter leaders but to point followers toward a map. In quiet moments, she still bookended her days with small rituals. A cup of tea stirred clockwise 7 times, a text to Leah that read we keep, and a visit, when the city let her, to the hotel lobby where her life had turned right at the counter. On an autumn evening warm enough to fool leaves, Amara stood under the chandelier where the denial had been planted. The lobby was busy with arrivals. A wedding party carrying roses, a writer lugging a over-hopeful manuscript, a father helping his son, ears bright with hearing aids, balance a backpack and a smile. Helena passed by with a clipboard, paused. Ms. Cole, yes, I wanted you to know I'm leaving next month, Helena said, nervous but straight. To open a small inn with my sister in Asheville. We're going to run it right. Amara grinned. Send me the business plan. Helena laughed, hand to her chest. We already did. When she walked away, Tarek appeared like timing. Coffee. You read minds, Amara said. I read lobbies, he replied. He handed her a small black mug. On the side, a quote in gold cursive. Welcome is a verb. You designed this, she asked. With Rosa, he said. And the new fellows. We're trying things. Keep trying, Amara said. That's the whole job. She sipped and watched the door revolve. In the glass she saw a woman who looked like the woman from the first night, but different, the way a tree looks like itself after a lightning strike and a spring. A young girl approached, maybe 12, hair in braids, eyes curious. Are you the lady from the video? She asked, small voice folding into big space. Amara crouched to the girl's height, as ever. I'm the lady from a lot of videos, she said gently. Which one did you see? The one where they said no to you and then you said yes to everybody, the girl answered. Amara laughed, softly. That's a good edit. My mom says I should learn to carry myself like you, the girl said. What does that mean? It means you walk like the room belongs to you, Amara said, and you act like it belongs to everyone. The girl nodded in the precise way a child nods when she is saving something in her chest for later. Okay, she said, and wandered back to a woman who watched her from a chair by the fireplace, tired but dignified, nose tucked red from a long day. Amara set the coffee down, placed a palm flat on the marble counter, and listened to the hum of a building that had learned a new song. It wasn't perfect, no song is, but it had a chorus 1,000 people could sing. Hotels are midnight towns. Later that night, after the guests slept and the streets yawned, Amara walked the service corridor. The walls were painted the same cream as the lobby now, because beauty was not a front of house expense. She passed the staff break room where a bulletin board held pictures of babies and graduations. Someone had pinned a ribbon that read I was seen. Rosa was there, writing next week's schedule with a pen that had learned swagger. Can't sleep, she asked. Can't stop, Amara said, smiling. Rosa placed the schedule down. You taught us that welcome is not a word. It's work, but it's also joy. They walked to the loading dock where the night manager waved to a driver backing a truck full of fresh linens. The driver hopped down, a woman with arms like kindness, and said, You the owner? One of the ladies, Amara said again. My sister. Got one of those fellowships, the driver said. She never thought she'd be the boss of anything. Now she bosses me. They laughed. The truck's rear door rattled up. Bales of sheets glowed like captured moon. Do you want to see something? Rosa asked, eyes bright. She led Amara to room 428. The brass key slid into the lock like a good secret. Inside, lamps washed the corners with gold. On the desk lay a framed photograph. A rooming house in sepia, women on steps squinting into the future. Below it, a plaque, in honor of the hands that cleaned rooms they could not afford. Amara touched the frame. "My mother would have sat right here and told you to charge more," she said. Rosa smiled. "We did." They stood in the quiet and counted their breaths like inventory. Outside, the city kept its truce with dawn. On the anniversary of the acquisition, Amara hosted a luncheon not for investors or influencers, but for the women who raised her, literally and otherwise. Teachers, aunties, a foster mom who had kept her weekends safe in high school when home had been a storm. They gathered in the ballroom beneath the chandeliers, now retrofitted with LEDs that cost less and lit more. There were speeches, but mostly there was laughter with old teeth in it. Amara stood to speak and realized she had no notes. "I was denied a room," she said, "and it hurt. Not because I needed a bed. Because the refusal made a claim about who belonged, and it lied. So we told a bigger truth. We built a room too large for a single key." She looked around. At Rosa and Tarek, at Helena's empty seat with a note that said "Send biscuits from Asheville," at the investors who had become customers not kings. "The thing about power," Amara said, "is that it's only beautiful when it's borrowed. When you lend it until there's nothing to lend because no one needs it." The crowd stood, not because standing ovations mean anything but because sometimes bodies need to move to agree. Amara stepped down from the stage and hugged the women who had turned her spine into a ladder. When she reached the door, she paused. She placed her palm against the wood, warm from the room. "Thank you," she whispered, not to the hotel, not to the marble, but to the moment that had taught her that a refusal can be an invitation if you bring your own table. Outside, the city answered with sunlight on glass.